Welcome back to my channel. My name's Lucy and I share videos on the topic of long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome and mind-body approaches that can be used for those conditions and other mind-body conditions. I also offer coaching to people who are interested in applying a mind-body approach to their recovery and need some support doing that. In today's video, I wanted to talk about this question: should I rest or should I push through? And I wanted to speak on this topic because I've been asked this question a lot, and for many people it is really difficult to decide how much activity to do or whether to do activity when you're feeling a bit worse. In the outset, I think the term pushing through is something that different people have different understandings of. I generally think of pushing through as ignoring symptoms or emotions, trying to kind of put things to the side and keep moving or keep doing something or decide to do something whilst not paying attention to part of our experience. And part of that experience might be that thought or that doubt about whether we should be doing it. But I understand that other people maybe have a different understanding of what that term means, to push through. What I share in this video is not medical or mental health advice. I'm sharing ideas based on my own experience of using a mind-body approach. Sometimes when people come across the idea of a mind-body approach, they really want to do more activity naturally, and they're learning that it is helpful to gradually increase activity. So this might lead them to wonder, when is the right time to do activity? And I personally don't use the term pushing through, because to me that means we're ignoring an emotion or a feeling. We're maybe not paying attention to the body, or our body is giving us signals but we're ignoring those signals. So that's not a term I generally use. But I suppose if we think about the question underneath this, it really is, when should I be active and when should I rest? There's so many variables, and this is individual. It depends on people's individual situations. But I think there are a few factors that can be really helpful to take into consideration when you're deciding this. And I think what's nice about a mind-body approach is that it allows us to be aware of these other factors, and some other approaches don't take this into consideration. And often in the past, people have had bad experiences by doing an activity and getting an increase in symptoms afterwards and not understanding why. And even when using a mind-body approach, often symptoms do still arise after doing an activity. And this is something that we are teaching our brains as safe, that it's okay that the symptoms are coming up, and that with time they will gradually decrease as we reinforce a more positive association with activity where we feel safe doing it. So the first factor to consider when you're thinking about whether to increase activity or not is what your level of fear is. So if your fear is a 2 out of 10, 10 being the highest your fear has ever got, 0 being no fear, then that's a pretty good place to start with an activity. So maybe this is something that you do most days, and it still provokes a sense of fear doing it, but just a little, because you've already established trust that you're going to be okay doing this particular activity. So a 2 out of 10 is pretty low. If doing this activity is going to provoke a fear of 10 out of 10, you might question if there are some ways of breaking that down to start smaller. The problem with choosing an activity that's going to provoke a high level of fear within you is that the fear is going to affect the nervous system. And we're trying to teach our brains that it is safe doing these activities. And that is easier if our fear level is a little bit lower. In some instances, it does work, even if you choose something that's 10 out of 10 fear, if you really can manage that experience of fear both during and after the activity. But that's going to be more challenging for anyone. And for some people, it might leave them feeling more concerned or anxious about doing that particular activity again. So it's about building a positive, corrective experience doing those activities. Fear level is going to change based on the day and the week, based on how your symptoms are feeling on a given day. So if you have already done various things this week or had different challenges come up, your fear level might be higher for the exact same activity that you did last week, even though it's the exact same activity. One thing that can affect your level of fear, but also maybe your decision whether to do an activity or not, is how much challenge you've already taken on in that given day or week. So if on Monday you did an activity you haven't done in a really long time, on Tuesday you did a different activity you haven't done in a really long time, on Wednesday you're deciding whether or not you should do something else, it might be worth considering what's driving you to put yourself out of your comfort zone so frequently. And this might just be excitement about doing these things again, wanting to progress, wanting to feel better, and that's fine. And that's a very valid reason. But also, it's okay not to challenge yourself every day. It's okay to take a day off. It's okay to put yourself out of your comfort zone and then take a step back for a day and then do it again the next day. Do it in a way that is balanced so that you can sustain it and you can maintain the progress that you're making, rather than taking on too many things all at once. This also, I think, gives us confidence. So we start to establish more confidence that we're able to manage if symptoms increase afterwards, reassure ourselves that we're okay, we're safe, notice any fear or doubt or negative thinking that might come in during or after a new activity. For some people using a mind-body approach, they have a lot of experience of managing fear, managing doubt, and managing the challenge of symptoms increasing. And they feel pretty confident that when symptoms increase, they will be able to respond with mind-body tools and feel okay, despite the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable to experience symptoms. For other people, they're newer to the approach, they haven't practiced as much, and responding to fear and doubt doesn't feel as easy. It feels like the fear and the doubt are taking over. And so this is another factor to consider when you're increasing activity. Thinking about your resources and your capacity to manage fear, doubt, and increasing symptoms. And that's not to say don't do it if you don't feel like that's going to be a challenge, because the whole point is to improve those skills. And that happens with time and that happens with practice. But it might be something that guides your decision around how much activity to do and what day suits best for you to do that. Naturally, there are more days where we have a little bit more time, energy, or capacity to use mind-body tools and to notice fear, to notice doubt, to spend a little bit of time reflecting before, during, and after doing a new activity. Another factor to consider is how you are feeling emotionally, if there could be any emotions you're less aware of or any emotional triggers going on, and just to ask yourself, are you dealing with it? Are you using any mind-body tools like expressive writing? Are you noticing, acknowledging those feelings at all? Or are they just in the background, something that you're kind of ignoring? Because emotions that we're less aware of or not acknowledging can impact the nervous system and the brain and how safe we feel, it is helpful to regularly check in on this side of things And it makes sense to do that before deciding to do a new activity, or at least knowing that we're going to do it at some point that day or that week. Because this is just using a holistic mind-body approach that's going to give you more chances of success and doing well using this approach. Another factor to consider is whether you are generally increasing activity over time or whether you're stuck. And when I say stuck, I basically mean that you're struggling to increase activity because of the increase in symptoms. And so you've been avoiding increasing activity. So for some people, they know they've already been increasing activity for a number of weeks and it's been going well. For other people, they are trying to start increasing activity again after not doing it for some time because of maybe setbacks or challenges that have arisen. If you are having a day that feels a bit harder, symptoms are worse, but you know that you have already generally been pretty consistent with increasing activity, then you don't need to feel lots of pressure to increase activity on that day because you've been doing it well across time and there's going to be another day that you can increase activity. You don't need to increase activity every single day. If you're on the other end of the spectrum where actually you haven't increased activity in weeks or months and you don't feel great and you're concerned about the impact that activity will have on you physically, you have to start somewhere. There never really feels like the perfect or ideal time to start. You can wait until you feel a bit better, but often for many people that ends up being inconsistent. You might feel better, but then you feel worse for another month, or it's hard to actually get going. So it's about taking small steps in this situation so that you can start increasing activity and practicing mind-body tools whilst doing that, knowing that it is okay if symptoms increase after doing that activity, that's a normal part of the process, and that with that we have to practice managing feeling safe, giving ourselves messages of safety, reassuring ourselves that we're okay, and also managing any fear or doubt that comes up. So the way that I like to do that is by acknowledging it. So rather than trying to sweep it under a carpet, acknowledging that the fear is there, that the doubt is there, and holding some compassion for yourself and those feelings whilst they come up. This isn't easy to do. It does take time to learn, and also it involves a lot of consistency over time. So it's really hard if we feel perfectionistic about the process, because often it doesn't feel like we're making lots of progress quickly. Patience is involved. And this is sometimes a reason why people get stuck into not increasing activity. Another factor to consider is, what are your feelings towards rest? Using a mind-body approach doesn't mean that you should just stop resting and never rest again. I think it's actually quite helpful to think about it in terms of the long-term picture. And everyone needs to rest. Everyone sleeps at night. It's very normal that if someone without any mind-body symptoms felt tired during the day, they might, if they had time, take a rest. If they slept really badly the night before and they happened to be off work the next day, they might take a nap if they wanted to, or they might go easy on themselves that day. So resting is normal, and it is helpful to have this as a normal part of our routine so that we're not constantly pushing ourselves or striving to achieve things. If you actually really don't like resting and you don't like sitting down and doing nothing, it might be a form of avoidance, that you're avoiding certain feelings that would come up if you were to take time to rest. It might also be that you learned as a child resting means something negative about a person. So you might have been told you were lazy if you rested. You might have just grown up with people who are really proactive, always doing things, not taking time to unwind and relax. And so we want to build up a normal balance where we can rest. When people have chronic fatigue or long COVID or chronic pain, they struggle to know what's the right amount of rest, because before they got unwell, they didn't actually take time to rest. I think it's helpful to notice if this is something that is relevant to you, because if so, you need to establish a new okayness and acceptance that it's okay to rest. There might be a day where you could challenge yourself to do a new activity. And also there's the choice of just taking it easy and not challenging yourself. And if you are the type of person that tends to take the challenge more often, it might be good to practice resting a little bit more. So this doesn't necessarily mean lying in bed and doing nothing. If you're well enough and if you have the ability to rest by doing something you enjoy, that you find comfortable, like doing some art, listening to a podcast, doing something that is nurturing in some way for you, then choose that particular activity. If you find meditation really relaxing and restful, do that. But sometimes people think about meditation, breathing exercises, yoga nidra, and some of these other tools that help the nervous system. They kind of have put it in the category of productive homework things I need to do. So productive things I'm going to do in my day. Maybe they don't feel it's very enjoyable, or they might not actually be doing it very mindfully because it's just a tick box item. And so meditation is not supposed to necessarily be enjoyable every time you do it. That's fine. It's still useful to do if you find a benefit from it. But also think about rest in terms of things that you actually enjoy, that are nurturing. So a good way to frame it is, what activities give me energy? What makes me feel more engaged, more relaxed when I do it? If you find that you're often indecisive about knowing what activity you should do or what level of activity is right for you, it might be that you are concerned about making the wrong decision. That's completely understandable, but also it can be a perfectionistic trait to want to always make the perfect decision and to fear regretting something. It can also be influenced by other reasons and things that may have happened in our past. Sometimes it's helpful also just to think there is no right or wrong. It's okay if I do something and it doesn't go perfectly. And also, if you're able to make decisions by tapping into the body a little bit more, that could be helpful. So I don't mean by paying attention to a symptom and thinking, oh gosh, I shouldn't do anything, I've got this symptom. What I mean is kind of tapping into your intuition about what feels right when you ask yourself and you're open to noticing how it feels in your body. This can be hard if you're not used to doing it, but often when we're struggling with decisions, we're stuck up in our head and we're a little bit detached from the body. We're just analysing. So hopefully you found some of these ideas helpful. Let me know in the comments if any of these things resonate with you, or if there are any other factors that you feel have been helpful for you in terms of deciding when to be active and when to rest. If you're interested in getting some support using this approach, there's a link for contacting me in the description. If you're interested in joining my Facebook group or following me on Instagram, I also have links in the description for that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.